Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. I'm Rick Uzzi. The Department of Homeland Security is going to be awarding over $18 million to 32 tribal organizations for cybersecurity. I will be right back with the details. Hey there, thanks for joining me again for Broadband Deployment News. So this is not necessarily about broadband, although a lot of these tribal organizations may be getting broadband funds, but this is really just in general for cybersecurity. So I wanted to talk about this because this is very important. And as I go through this, if you are a tribal organization and you're going to be getting these funds and now trying to figure out, well, how can we best use those? Check us out. Go to zquorum.com/cybersecurity, and you'll see that we can help you with managed cybersecurity services, including Security Operations Center as a service. So you can get 24/7 monitoring, detection, remediation kinds of services from us, as well as managed endpoint detection response, those kinds of things. So again, zquorum.com/cybersecurity, and we'd be happy to help you out. Or any other organization that's looking for cybersecurity, if you happen to be checking this out, go there and you'll see how we can help you. So again, I wanted to go through this press release and look at who won and a couple of other things in here. So we see DHS announces $18.2 million in first ever Tribal Security Grant Program awards. Today, the DHS through FEMA and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, announced more than $18.2 million in Tribal Security Grant Program awards to assist tribal nations with managing and reducing systemic cyber risk and threats. These are the first ever tribal security grants to be awarded. The grant program was established by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. So that's the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or the IIJA, that they later kind of renamed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And the more than 30 grant awards represent the largest number of awards ever provided by the department to tribal nations in a single grant program. Digital threats impacting American Indian and Alaska Native tribes are increasing and becoming more complex, and tribal sovereignty creates unique cybersecurity challenges for these communities who have been consistently underfunded and under-resourced. This program is another example of a unified approach across DHS. This FEMA administrative program leverages CISA's capabilities to support grant recipients. And CISA, by the way, this is the CISA website. I link to everything in the description of this video that you're going to see today. So CISA is an agency that was established by the Trump administration back in 2018, and it was specifically created for these kinds of things, to try to make sure that U.S. infrastructure is secure, but not just U.S. infrastructure. As we see tribal organizations, businesses, even just any business, there are resources up here. And, for broadband operators, it's very important because CISA, as they continue to look at these things, they have already, in some funding, some notices of proposed rulemaking and some other things, have already classified broadband operators as critical infrastructure providers. And not just because it's critical infrastructure, but also it's critical services for other critical infrastructure providers. So broadband's essential for anybody else that's also a critical infrastructure provider. So that's just something to be aware of. So there's a link to the CISA site, as I mentioned in the description here, if you want to check that out. But that's what they are referring to here as far as it's leveraging CISA's capabilities to support grant recipients. The Tribal Cybersecurity Grant Program will fund efforts to establish critical governance frameworks for tribal nations to address cyber threats and vulnerabilities, identify key vulnerabilities and evaluate needed capabilities, implement measures to mitigate the threats, and develop a 21st century cyber workforce across local communities. And as we'll see here, I'm going to look real briefly just at the notice of funding opportunity to point out the fact that that what the government is doing on a lot of these things, and that includes the BEAD program, that includes USDA, the new USDA Reconnect awards, that includes what they did with enhanced EACAM. They're all focusing on frameworks, a cybersecurity framework, and they all revolve around the NIST. And again, we looked at the NIST. I'm sorry, that's this. I'm sorry, we didn't look at NIST. I will post a link to the NIST cybersecurity framework as well. I didn't have that on here, but so they all focus, they basically revolve or focus around the NIST cybersecurity framework, which has 6 categories, main categories that need to be looked at, like protect your network, detect, how you recover, identify, how you identify threats. And then how you govern all of that kind of, that's all involved in the cybersecurity framework that NIST has. So, and we'll see here then in the notice of funding opportunity and NOFO for this, that NIST is mentioned, not just mentioned, but it's really a big part of this. So that's something to be aware of. I will go through that in a second. So you see here, the Tribal Security Grant Program will fund efforts to establish, I already mentioned that. So it's talking about funding efforts to establish frameworks, but really, like I say, they are pointing to the NIST framework there. All Tribal Security Grant Program recipients are required to participate in a limited number of free services provided by CISA. And those services are cyber hygiene vulnerability scanning, so evaluates external network presence by continuous scanning public static internet protocol IPs for accessible services and vulnerabilities. And nationwide cybersecurity review, a free anonymous annual self-assessment designed to measure gaps and capabilities of a recipient's cybersecurity programs. So NIST does have those kinds of resources available. A lot of that's the kind of thing that we could help with as well. We could help with folks understanding what they can get through CISA, but also, fill in the gaps here that might be needed as far as, let's say, identifying vulnerabilities, those kinds of things. But then, of course, there's all the other stuff. There's the technology that's needed to detect the cyber threats, to mitigate those. You really need 24/7 monitoring of these systems, because those who are the bad guys don't sleep at night, and they're quite often in other countries where maybe it's not night, and you can't ignore these things. You've got to be on top of them. You've got to be constantly monitoring and have the equipment and the technology to do that, and then the people to look at what's coming out of that monitoring and then figure out what to do and to try to mitigate those issues, to try to prevent anybody that might have gotten into a network or a piece of equipment from getting further into that network. So kind of locking things down and then figuring out what has to happen there. So there's all kinds of things that needs to happen. It's very time consuming. It could be very expensive to set up on your own, which is why, again, I wanted to point out how we can help. So I'll mention that at the end as well, just in areas where we can help. These grants will significantly improve national resilience to cyber threats by giving tribal nations much needed resources to address network security and take steps to protect against cybersecurity risks to help them strengthen their communities. In addition, federally recognized tribes are eligible to apply for millions more in tribal security funding that will be announced later this year. So I think what they're saying is there's more money in this particular fund. So this is what's been announced as of July 1st. So I think at this point, a lot of these tribes, now that they're aware they have this, are trying to figure out how to do this. So that's kind of the spot where we are now. So you see, again, there's 32 of these, and they vary in amounts from, we see here is $1,778,000, et cetera, $3 million. This is the largest amount here for Inupiat Community of the Arctic Slope. So I'm assuming that's in Alaska. And we got some other amounts here. You see 365, 861,000, 2 million. That's the next largest amount, I believe, for Southern UT Indian Tribe. Then the smallest amount we had was down here. This one, Aroostook Micmac Council, $17,850. So I didn't see any other information about what this is going to be going towards. At least I didn't look real hard into that, but you can see the amounts there and who's gotten those awards. Again, I mentioned this. This is the Notice of Funding Opportunity, so I linked to this as well. So you can see here, you got FEMA on here, Department of Homeland Security, Notice of Funding Opportunity, fiscal year 2023, interesting 2023, but release date 2024. You can download a copy of that, and I'm not going to go through this, but I did want to point out again, let me just do a quick find on here. I already did that earlier, so NIST. So you can see down here, this is the goal of the Tribal Cybersecurity Grant Program, assist tribal governments with managing and reducing systemic cyber risk. So you can see here that they've got to, tribal applicants are required to submit a project that coincides with Objective 1 of the TCGP program. And you've got here program objective, and you've got objective 1, and then you've got objective 2 down here. And you can see NIST specifically is mentioned here. Organization conducts annual tabletop and full scope exercises that include practical execution of restoration and recovery processes to test approved cybersecurity plans. Conducting these exercises allows organizations to test approved cybersecurity plans to identify, and here you go, here's the identify, protect, detect, respond to, and recover. That's the 5 main categories of the NIST framework. The 2.0 framework added govern, or governance on top of that, that kind of is the feedback loop that kind of takes you through this whole process and then back again. So these particular parts of the framework from cybersecurity incidents in line with the NIST cybersecurity framework and demonstrates process to incorporate lessons learned from the exercise into their cybersecurity program. That lessons learned and incorporating that's part of the governance, again, part of framework 2.0, and getting feedback and then figuring out how to not let it happen again, or how to be better next time, I guess, is one way to say it. It's probably mentioned here as well. CISA employs the NIST. That's something else. That may not be necessarily related to the framework, but NIST and CISA, they're going to go hand in hand on lots of this stuff to try to make sure that they're not duplicating things. So again, NIST is going to be very important for this. And frameworks are good. Framework helps you determine, it really gives you something to use to make sure that you're doing everything the right way. Again, based on these particular categories, it gives you a framework. How about that? It gives you a framework to follow to make sure that you're doing what you need to be doing on cybersecurity. So, and again, I wanted to point out on our website, if you go, just go to zcorm.com/cybersecurity, as I mentioned, and that'll pull up this microsite. And when you do, you'll see resources here. And under white papers and ebooks, you will find that we've got a couple of things about NIST. Here's something on BEAD funding and a cybersecurity solutions brief that goes through the different categories of the NIST framework. So that explains that. Here's something on ransomware campaigns, cybersecurity policies, and this says BEAD and EACAM funding. It's an ebook about, again, mentioning a lot of the NIST framework, and again, that is something that is required for BEAD and was required for the new EACAM program, enhanced ACAM program as well. Essential tips ebook. So we've got that, and then of course, if you want to check out our product sheet, we've got here's a cybersecurity solutions brief. This is View Managed Solutions. That's the product sheet. And then here we've got cybersecurity infogram. Oh yeah, if you want to check that out, infogram. Here's a webinar that I did with Travis Abrams, a cybersecurity expert, where we went through the NIST cybersecurity framework. So you want to check this out. You can view that. Just click there to check out that webinar. He goes through the different portions of the framework and how we can help. So again, if you're looking at this, if you need to be deploying cybersecurity for some reason, if you are one of the tribal organizations that are just now finding this and looking for it, or if you are looking at getting BEAD funding or USDA Reconnect funding, or your insurance company has said, hey, you need to have cybersecurity in place if we're going to insure you, and it needs to reflect something like the NIST framework. It could be multiple reasons why you find this later. If you do, that would be very good for you to watch. So check that out. And again, we've got this little infogram here. There's some stats in here that you can check out. Cool little things. So we've got some resources up there, including that product sheet if you want to check that out. Feel free to contact us. We do have on here, I believe, an offer, free 3-week trial of our cybersecurity endpoint detection response. So let's try it out. We're not on every single device in your network, but I think we have a certain number of devices that we will let you try that out on. So check that out. You can also schedule a live presentation right here to talk with our folks. So again, we can really help with this. There's a lot that you have to do, as I said, and trying to build all of this on your own is going to be nearly impossible if you are a tribal organization. You're getting some amount of money, but that's only going to take you so far. And what we can do for you is make this much more affordable. One of the biggest expenses, if you were going to try to do this on your own, would be the people. You've got IT people that are trying to keep your network up and running probably now. It could be somebody who's kind of a computer guru, depending on how big your organization is, to an IT department. But the IT department, they've got their hands full with that, and cybersecurity is a whole nother level. Again, 24/7 kind of requirement of monitoring. Somebody who really specializes in that, who can watch what's going on, figure out what's going on, and then take care of that. So while your IT department's sleeping very well in bed because they know cybersecurity is taken care of, then the Security Operations Center, as a service that we could provide, for example, would be taking care of some of those things, and then working with you later on, figuring out what's, where the problem was, how did somebody get in here, how do we stop that from happening next time, or somebody did try to get in, and there's honeypots we can do, managed deception, to kind of draw people in, and then figure out who they are, those kinds of things. There's lots of things that are involved in a really robust, full cybersecurity program. So we'd be happy to help you. You see our contact information there. Again, zcorm.com, the website, but zcorm.com/cybersecurity. And you've got our email address there, info@zcorm.com. Be happy to answer any questions that you have if you send a message there. You see our phone number. So happy to help you. Want to make sure that you're aware that this grant program is out there now, especially if you're a tribal nation, and that more money is coming if you're a tribal nation. So you can, if you didn't get picked this time, you've got an opportunity coming up here. So again, that's something you might want to look into. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button and make sure the bell is clicked there to notify you when I am live. And if you haven't liked the video, if you've watched before and haven't liked it, I'd appreciate a like on a video today. That helps us get our word out, and it's just always nice to know that people are appreciating the videos we're doing. So thank you very much, and I will see you next time for Broadband Deployment News. Take care. Bye-bye.